There is a form of power that makes no sound. It moves through the air like a shadow, unnoticed by those who crave applause. The world celebrates the loud, the ones who shout their convictions, who display their rage, who mistake motion for mastery. But the ones who truly rule, rule in silence. Their eyes speak more than their words ever could. Their restraint unsettles the impulsive, their calm disarms the ambitious, and their quiet decisions alter the course of empires. Silence is not the absence of action. It is the concentration of intention. It is the art of withholding truth until it becomes a weapon. A ruler who speaks too soon becomes predictable. A commander who reveals his strategy invites betrayal. The one who stays silent forces the world to guess, and it is in that guessing that others reveal themselves. Every word you say draws a map of your mind for others to exploit. Every silence you hold builds a fortress they cannot enter. Men are governed not by truth, but by perception. When you are silent, perception becomes your ally. It multiplies your presence in their imagination, turns your stillness into a question they cannot answer. They will speak in your absence, invent motives, whisper stories, and in doing so, they expose their own. Silence makes men show their cards. It is the mirror that reveals their fear, their envy, their weakness. To lead is to master timing. Words spoken too early are seeds scattered before the rain. But silence, well-timed, deliberate silence, allows the soil of tension to harden until the moment your words break it open like thunder. The wise ruler does not waste his voice on those who cannot understand power. He lets curiosity, doubt, and fear do his work for him. In politics, in business, in war, silence is never emptiness. It is pressure. Every powerful figure learns this too late. They mistake noise for influence, thinking visibility is the same as control. But the one who observes in silence gathers the intelligence of 100 careless tongues. The one who listens, truly listens, commands armies without lifting a hand. For silence is the mother of strategy, the space where thought sharpens, where emotion cools, where advantage takes form. Those who cannot control their tongue cannot control their fate. Words are debts. Every promise, every boast, every confession is a chain that binds you to the expectations of others. Silence frees you. It makes you untraceable, unpredictable. It gives you room to maneuver when the world corners you with its demands for explanation. Remember, no one can betray what they do not know. In the court of power, silence separates the rulers from the ruled. The people demand to be entertained. Leaders have no such luxury. The noise of the crowd is a weapon of distraction. The ruler must see beyond it. He must know when to withdraw his voice, when to let the void speak for him. Even in conversation, silence exerts dominance. The one who can wait longest controls the rhythm of the exchange. The one who fears silence reveals dependence. Silence terrifies the weak because it forces them to face themselves. It strips away the illusions that comfort them. They need noise to feel alive, constant validation, constant movement. But the powerful know that silence is where power grows unseen, patient, inexorable. It is where alliances are measured, betrayals sensed, and the next move conceived without interference. In war, the quiet before battle is the most dangerous. It is not peace, it is calculation. In politics, the silence after scandal is the most powerful. It is not surrender, it is endurance. In life, the silence between words is the truest reflection of intent. For noise may conceal weakness, but silence always conceals strength. So when they provoke you, hold your silence. When they doubt you, hold your silence. When they underestimate you, hold your silence. For every reaction they expect and do not receive is a victory. You are not obligated to explain your ambition. Let your results speak. Let your enemies speak. Let your silence haunt them. Understand this. The tongue has toppled more rulers than armies have. A careless word is a door open to the assassin. A secret shared is a crown lost. Speak only when the effect of your words will outweigh the power of your quiet. The wise do not seek to be understood. They seek to endure. And endurance is born in silence. History remembers not the loudest, but the most deliberate. The conqueror who speaks only when necessary. The diplomat who negotiates by pause. The the thinker who shapes generations through restraint. Even death itself teaches through silence the final lesson of power, that all noise fades, but silence remains sovereign. In the end, silence is not submission, it is control. It is not fear, it is preparation. And when you master it, when you can stand unshaken while the world screams around you, then, and only then, have you understood what it means to rule. Because power, real power, is not heard, it is felt. And silence wins every time. The moment you embrace silence, you begin to see what others cannot. You begin to hear the movements of the world beneath the noise, the quiet intentions, the half-buried motives, the whispered betrayals forming in the dark. Most people speak to fill the void, not to express truth. They fear that if they remain silent, they will disappear. But those who understand power know that silence does not erase you, it multiplies you. It creates a presence so dense that others must orbit around it. The more you withhold, the more they project. They give you power by their own speculation. They build myths from your quiet. You become larger than your words, and that is the beginning of real dominion. Silence is the weapon of the strategist and the refuge of the betrayed. It gives you the time to observe the battlefield, to see the weaknesses of allies and enemies alike. It cools the blood when vengeance tempts the tongue. For nothing destroys judgment faster than anger expressed. The ruler who cannot hold his peace in insult will never hold his crown in crisis. The silent one endures insult as study material. Every attack, every rumor, every misjudgment all become intelligence. Let the fools exhaust themselves in their noise. Their recklessness is the tax they pay for their vanity. You owe them no answer. Silence makes them louder until they destroy themselves by their own echo. When others argue, remain quiet long enough and you will learn who they truly are. Their words betray what their masks hide. The fearful try to dominate the air with speech because quiet exposes them. The arrogant fill every silence because they cannot bear the thought of insignificance. But the disciplined few understand that silence is not absence, it is concentration. It is the invisible hand that bends conversation, the unseen authority that shapes perception. When you speak little, every word becomes law, every pause becomes tension, every glance becomes judgment. You lead without commanding, and yet silence demands discipline. It is not natural to man, whose nature seeks expression, approval, alliance. The silence of power must be built through self-conquest, to say nothing when you know the truth, to wait when opportunity screams your name, to endure misunderstanding when you could easily correct it. That is not weakness, that is command. The prince who cannot restrain himself from explaining will never command obedience, for he places understanding above authority. Power does not explain. Power acts and lets the world interpret. The world belongs to those who can be silent long enough for others to reveal their intent. Silence unmasks loyalty and deception alike. In every negotiation, in every counsel, in every friendship, the one who speaks first gives ground. The one who listens gains the map. Let the impatient fill the void. Let them reach for your thoughts and fail to grasp them. You lose nothing by withholding. In time, they will tell you everything while believing you have said nothing. To command silence in oneself is mastery. To command silence in others is dominion. A ruler's greatest moment of influence often comes not from decree, but from stillness. A pause that makes the ambitious reconsider, the guilty confess, the loyal strengthen their devotion. Silence is not passive. It is the architecture of control. It directs behavior without visible force. It shapes the atmosphere of a room. In the presence of true power, even the air grows heavy with unspoken authority. But do not mistake silence for apathy. The silent ruler feels deeply. He simply does not allow his feelings to dictate his actions. He listens to his own fury as one studies a storm from behind stone walls, observing, calculating, waiting for the right moment to release the thunder. This is how silence wins, not by avoidance, but by precision. To act rarely, to speak selectively, to strike once but decisively. The impatient burn quickly. The silent endure like iron beneath the earth. Every empire that fell began with a voice that could not stay silent. Every betrayal began with a whisper too proud to die in the throat. The downfall of leaders is rarely plotted by enemies. It is invited by their own need to be heard. The loud man tells the world where to strike. The silent one hides his vulnerabilities beneath calm, and no arrow finds its mark. In silence lies invisibility, and in invisibility, safety. When silence becomes your ally, you no longer chase control. You emanate it. People read your restraint as power, because it is. They feel your absence as presence, because silence amplifies the aura of the composed. It teaches those around you that you cannot be provoked, cannot be rushed, cannot be broken by reaction. You move when you choose, and because of that, your every motion carries the weight of inevitability. This is why silence conquers, because it is not reactive. It does not bend to the rhythm of others. It dictates its own tempo. It is the mark of a mind that no longer seeks to prove, only to prevail. And when all voices fade, when the shouting of the crowd dissolves into fatigue, silence remains steady, patient, unchallenged. It is the final voice of power, the last sound before victory, and the first sound after it. Silence teaches you to see the game as it truly is. The louder the world becomes, the easier it is to hide truth beneath the music of outrage and applause. But when you retreat into quiet, you begin to see how men move, how their pride leads them, how their fear confines them, how their ambition betrays them long before their enemies do. The silent ruler studies without being seen, learns without revealing curiosity, and plans without exposing intent. Silence is the chamber where vision is born, where strategy takes its first breath. To speak before seeing is to act blindfolded. To remain silent until the picture is complete is to see the board from above. In silence, the ruler becomes a mirror not of flattery, but of truth. Others will project themselves upon your stillness. The coward will mistake you for a threat. The vain will mistake you for admiration, and the wise will recognize your discipline. You will need no declarations. Your silence will sort your allies from your enemies more efficiently than any interrogation. Every man reveals himself when faced with what he cannot read, but silence also tests your loyalty to your own will. It asks you to trust your inner vision when the noise of others demands reaction. It isolates you, and in that isolation, the weak seek comfort in confession, while the strong learn self-reliance. The ruler must stand in the center of that void and know that silence is not emptiness, but focus. You are not waiting for the world. You are letting it come to you. Every second of silence is a net cast into the waters of human behavior, and sooner or later, something always surfaces. Remember that words once spoken can never be recalled. They travel faster than thought and return as weapons forged in misunderstanding. A single careless phrase can undo years of control, but silence can be refined endlessly within your mind before it manifests into speech. It allows thought to mature into precision. It turns instinct into judgment. It transforms emotion into power. Those who cannot hold their silence become slaves to impulse. Those who can hold it command their destiny. The art of silence is not about absence from the world, but dominance over the self. It is the discipline of those who refuse to be distracted by the vanity of performance. In an age where everyone is desperate to be seen, to be heard, to be applauded, the one who can be silent becomes untouchable. He no longer competes for attention, he commands it. His silence becomes magnetic because it is rare, and rarity has always been the mark of value. Silence is also the great equalizer. It diminishes the loud and elevates the thoughtful. In a council of voices, the quiet one becomes the axis. All must turn toward him to interpret what his silence means. Even if he has no plan, they will imagine one. Even if he holds no cards, they will believe he does. This illusion alone is often enough to tilt the balance of power. The appearance of control, born of silence, can achieve more than the reality of noise. The true ruler does not speak to be understood. He speaks to be obeyed. And when he does, his silence beforehand makes every word a decree. Because he does not spend his voice on trivialities, his speech carries gravity. Every syllable becomes event. Every statement becomes command. To speak little is to make words sacred, and sacred words shape nations. Silence is a lesson taught by loss. The betrayed learn it when their confessions are used against them. The defeated learn it when their boasting draws the blade. The exiled learn it when no one listens anymore. But the wise learn it before pain teaches it. They understand that control begins not with dominion over others, but with dominion over one's own tongue. A man who cannot govern his speech cannot govern a state. Even nature rewards silence. The predator stalks quietly before it kills. The sea seems calm before it devours the shore. The mountain stands silent, yet commands reverence from all who behold it. Power does not roar, it waits. It lets tension ripen until its release is inescapable. Those who live loudly exhaust their strength before the decisive moment. The silent endure until timing itself becomes their accomplice. You must learn to weaponize your quiet. Use it to unsettle, to reveal, to command. Let your stillness become the language of your strength. Let others waste their energy justifying, arguing, performing, and while they do, observe. Every word they spend is a coin that buys you understanding. Every silence you hold is interest accumulated in power. When the moment to act finally comes, your silence will have already prepared the field. They will not see you move until it is too late. And when you do speak, they will listen not because your words are louder, but because your silence has made them rare. That is the paradox of command. The fewer your words, the deeper their echo. So hold your silence as you would hold a blade. Keep it hidden until it must be used. Do not draw it for noise, but for necessity, because once released, it must cut cleanly, decisively, and without hesitation. This is the essence of Machiavellian silence, not retreat, not withdrawal, but control so complete that speech itself becomes a strategic strike. And when you have mastered that, you will no longer fear being misunderstood, for misunderstanding becomes your camouflage. You will no longer fear solitude, for silence will be your fortress. You will no longer fear opposition, for you will know that true conflict begins long before the first word and ends long before the last. For in the theater of power, the loud perform, the silent decide. And in the end, when the noise of the crowd fades and the lights dim, it is the quiet figure standing alone who holds the truth. Because silence is not the absence of sound, it is the presence of control. It wins not by conquest, but by endurance. It waits until all others have spoken themselves into defeat, and when the final echo dies, silence remains victorious, eternal, unchallenged. Consider the diplomat who says nothing at the negotiation table. His silence makes the opposing side nervous. They begin to over-explain, to reveal their concessions before he has asked for them. His quiet is not ignorance, it is leverage. Every pause forces the others to fill the void, and in filling it, they expose their priorities. The diplomat leaves with more than he offered, not because he argued better, but because he understood that silence forces men to reveal what persuasion cannot. Words are a form of currency. Spend too many, and you devalue your power. The one who speaks least keeps the most influence in reserve. Observe the general before battle. The soldiers chatter in fear or bravado, but he stands in silence. His calm becomes their courage. They see no panic in him, and therefore, they believe there is none to be felt. Silence here is not passivity, it is leadership through presence. When a commander shows composure, he transfers his steadiness to the hearts of his men. They march because he does not speak. They obey because he does not plead. The fewer words he uses, the more each order carries the weight of destiny. Even in the court, silence dictates hierarchy. The ruler who listens makes the talkers compete for his favor. Ministers interpret his expressions like scripture. A nod replaces a paragraph. A gesture becomes law. Those who cannot endure the silence of power rush to speak, to advise, to flatter, and in their eagerness, they betray themselves. The sovereign gathers their words like a fisherman gathers nets, and from their noise he extracts what he needs most, knowledge of their intentions. Silence here is the instrument of control over ambition. In the marketplace, the wise merchant knows that silence is negotiation. The impatient buyer talks himself into a higher price. The quiet seller lets demand rise in the space of his calm. Silence manipulates the pulse of desire. It tells the other side, I can wait longer than you can. And in the world of commerce, patience is dominance disguised as stillness. Every silence between offers is a test who will break first, who fears the void, who must speak to feel secure. The one who remains silent wins, because silence creates pressure that words cannot relieve. Even the lover who understands silence wields an invisible advantage. Passion often burns loudest in the quiet. To not respond immediately is to make the other yearn for reply. The space between words grows electric, heavy with imagination. Silence makes affection more valuable because it introduces uncertainty, and uncertainty is the lifeblood of attraction. Speak too quickly, and you kill the tension. Remain silent, and you let desire mature into power. Emotional silence, when disciplined, transforms attachment into influence. In exile, silence is survival. The fallen statesman, the deposed leader, the disgraced thinker, those who return to power, are those who refuse to defend themselves when the mob demanded confession. To remain silent while being accused requires strength greater than protest. Time will turn the noise of accusation into exhaustion, and when it does, silence remains as the only voice that cannot be refuted. History has redeemed many not because they were innocent, but because they allowed silence to cleanse what words would have stained further. The assassin, too, understands silence. His weapon is not just the blade, but the quiet in which it strikes. The absence of warning is his greatest advantage. Power grows in the unseen, the unheard, the unspoken. In the corridors of states, in the dealings of intelligence, in the orchestration of coups, silence is the cloak that hides both crime and strategy. The loud conspirator dies, the quiet one rules afterward. Even in art, silence defines meaning. A composer knows that the pause between notes gives music its emotion. A writer knows that the space between words gives thought its depth. The same is true of leadership. If every command is spoken, the people stop listening. If every moment is filled, the people stop thinking. The ruler who introduces silence into the rhythm of power allows the governed to feel the weight of absence, and that absence becomes reverence. Silence also reveals what words obscure. When a man faces defeat, his excuses are noise. When he faces it silently, it becomes reflection. Failure met in silence turns to wisdom. Failure met in noise turns to bitterness. The leader who can sit in his own ruin without complaint transforms humiliation into insight. From that silence, new power emerges refined, dangerous, enduring. In the theater of diplomacy, silence shapes alliances. The nation that speaks less in negotiations appears more stable, more certain, more formidable. The weaker state hides behind declarations. The stronger lets ambiguity terrify. For what men cannot predict, they fear. Silence is the most economical form of intimidation. It allows strength to appear infinite because it reveals nothing of its limits. Look also to nature, to the spider that builds her web without sound, to the snake that strikes before a word is heard, to the moon that governs the tides without speech. All true influence operates silently. The most powerful forces of the world, gravity, time, death, make no sound, yet nothing escapes their rule. To imitate them is to embody inevitability. When the ruler learns this truth, he no longer fears being unseen. He becomes like the roots of a tree, invisible but essential, silent but foundational. The loud branches may catch the wind and snap, but the roots endure, feeding everything above while revealing nothing of their strength. The ruler who masters silence becomes irreplaceable, precisely because no one knows where his influence begins or ends. And there is a deeper victory in silence. It grants you the right to observe reality without distortion. Words shape perception. Silence reveals truth. Every time you resist the urge to speak, you see more clearly. You see the motives behind flattery, the cracks in loyalty, the inevitability of betrayal. Silence trains your instincts to replace reaction with recognition. You stop trying to control every moment and start directing its flow. The modern mind fears silence because it cannot bear the confrontation with itself. But the political mind thrives on it because only in silence can one measure consequence. The true ruler is not the one who is always seen, but the one whose influence is felt even in absence. His silence does not mean withdrawal, it means command from a higher plane. When others panic, speak, and stumble, the silent one remains steady, and in that stillness, the balance of the world shifts toward him. That is why silence wins every time, because it is not bound by emotion, not dependent on noise, and not weakened by the need to be understood. It watches, waits, and when it acts with the force of inevitability. Silence wins because it dismantles the illusions that sustain the powerful and the powerless alike. It removes the scaffolding of performance, the artificial rhythms of persuasion, and the desperate need for recognition that enslaves the ambitious. Silence is not a retreat. It is a declaration made without words. It announces mastery over self, which is the foundation of mastery over others. The one who governs his speech governs perception. The one who governs perception governs destiny. For the world moves not by truth, but by impressions, and silence molds impressions without revealing intent. To remain silent is to control the tempo of events. The impatient rush toward clarity. The wise withhold it. Every silence delays the reaction of others, forces hesitation, breeds uncertainty. And in the theater of power, uncertainty is paralysis. The ruler who remains unreadable commands the stage without lifting a finger. His stillness turns his opponents into his instruments. Their attempts to decipher him become the means by which he leads them. Silence is not passive. It is the invisible axis around which visible action revolves. It gives shape to chaos by denying it reaction. Silence also wins because it transforms tension into advantage. Where others expend energy explaining, defending, or retaliating, the silent conserve theirs. In restraint lies endurance. In endurance lies victory. The loud burn quickly, they seek immediate vindication and die by their own noise. The silent understand that power ripens in time, not in attention. They let the world speak itself into exhaustion, and when all noise fades, they inherit the calm. Silence is not the absence of momentum, it is the art of invisible motion, where strength accumulates without exposure. It is through silence that one learns the subtle architecture of control. Speech binds you to position, silence keeps you fluid. Words make you definable, silence makes you infinite. The one who can withhold his stance holds all possible stances within him. In politics, this flexibility is survival. It allows the ruler to become what the moment requires, feared by the ambitious, trusted by the desperate, mysterious to the masses. Silence wins because it cannot be cornered, it cannot be attacked, it cannot be defeated by noise. There is a rhythm in all human affairs, an ebb and flow between noise and quiet, between assertion and restraint. The wise learn to let silence govern that rhythm. When others rise in clamor, the ruler descends into stillness. When others retreat, he allows silence to fill the vacuum they leave behind. The crowd's attention shifts like the tide, drawn toward whoever resists it longest. Silence wins because it does not chase power. It magnetizes it. It is not seduction, but gravitation. To live in silence is to become untouchable by the emotional chaos of others. The silent do not explain themselves, because explanation implies equality. They do not justify, because justification is a confession of insecurity. Silence places you above argument, beyond the reach of persuasion. It frees you from the trap of needing to be right, for power does not concern itself with correctness, only with continuity. The ruler's silence protects his continuity, allowing him to outlast the noise that consumes lesser minds. And so, silence becomes the final expression of authority. The speech of kings is short. The silence of kings is eternal. The more one ascends in power, the fewer words are required. At the summit, speech ceases altogether, for there is no one left to convince, only reality to command. The ruler's silence merges with the silence of the world itself, where cause and consequence speak their own language. In that union, one discovers that silence wins not by domination, but by inevitability. It does not fight, it absorbs. It does not conquer, it endures. Silence wins every time because it cannot lose. Words can be twisted, actions can be misread, appearances can decay. But silence cannot be corrupted. It remains pure, unanswerable, beyond reach. In it lies the final sovereignty of the self, the last refuge of power unpolluted by display. It is the point where influence transcends noise and becomes nature itself, unseen, unspoken, unending. Silence is not the virtue of the timid. It is the discipline of those who command. It is the armor worn by those who understand that every word is a risk, every confession an opening, every display an invitation to attack. Power thrives not in exposure but in obscurity. The ruler who keeps his thoughts hidden forces the world to operate on rumor, not on certainty. And rumor is the currency of manipulation. In the absence of your voice, others will build their own narratives, but it is within those illusions that your advantage is born. To be silent is to allow the imagination of others to labor on your behalf. The silent ruler does not waste strength in protest or self-defense. He knows that denial only grants legitimacy to accusation. He understands that the crowd's memory is short, that time silence is louder than argument ever could. The prince who engages in justification lowers himself to the level of his critics. The prince who endures without response makes his composure a throne. In silence, authority matures, it ceases to plead. It commands by endurance. The wise know that to remain still when others flail is to rule them by contrast. Silence is also the language of judgment. The prince must learn to observe not merely what men say, but how they react to the absence of speech. It is in the discomfort of silence that loyalty and deceit reveal themselves. The flatterer will rush to fill the void. The coward will look away. The confident will meet your stillness with patience. Thus, silence is not only a shield but a mirror, reflecting the true quality of those around you. The one who speaks first, before the silent prince exposes his intentions more completely than interrogation could ever achieve. In the mechanics of rule, silence becomes the counterweight to visibility. A prince must appear enough to be known, but never so much that his mind can be read. To speak endlessly is to surrender control of one's mystery. Mystery is not ornament, it is necessity. It keeps fear alive in those who might betray, and reverence alive in those who would serve. The subjects of a silent ruler imagine more than they know, and that imagination sustains authority far longer than truth ever could. The art of governing is not to be loved, nor to be understood. It is to be obeyed. Silence serves obedience more effectively than rhetoric, for men obey what they cannot predict. They may despise your secrecy, but they will respect it. Even hatred is safer than familiarity, for hatred can be managed, but familiarity dissolves hierarchy. A ruler who speaks too freely invites comparison. One who speaks sparingly stands beyond it. The fewer your words, the greater the distance between yourself and those who depend on you. That distance is the space where command resides. Every movement of power requires concealment. Silence is the invisible cloak that hides motive, uncertainty, and fear. It allows you to act without warning, to retreat without confession, to adapt without shame. In a court of deceit, the tongue is the most treacherous servant. It betrays before the heart does. The prudent ruler masters his tongue first, for it is through speech that fortune first enters to destroy him. Silence keeps fortune at bay, for it offers her no door through which to enter. A ruler's silence should not be mistaken for passivity. It is the poise of one who governs not by noise, but by anticipation. To remain silent is to read the unfolding of events as one reads the stars, not to rush their meaning, but to let them declare themselves. The impatient prince acts in reaction. The silent one acts in design. He does not meet the storm head-on, but lets it expend its force before he moves. Patience is the weapon of the calculating mind, and silence is its sheath. In the end, silence is not only the instrument of power, it is its reflection. The greatest rule is not achieved by those who speak most, but by those whose silence outlives every challenge. The tombs of great men are quiet. Their monuments do not shout, yet their presence governs centuries. This is the final irony of authority, that the loud are remembered for their fall, and the silent for their permanence. The true prince leaves behind no echoes, only shadows, and those shadows rule long after his body is dust. Thus, let the ambitious learn that silence is not the absence of command, but its perfection. It is the breath before judgment, the the pause before the strike, the invisible act that moves the visible world. The wise prince does not seek to be understood. He seeks to be inevitable. And inevitability speaks in silence, calm, patient, untouchable. For when words decay and loyalty fades, only silence remains sovereign. Silence, when mastered, becomes the most eloquent expression of sovereignty. It is the final refinement of command, the point where a ruler's will no longer requires voice to shape the actions of men. The world bends instinctively before composure it cannot decipher. In politics, as in war, uncertainty is the sharpest blade. Silence is the sheath that conceals it until the moment of execution. The prince who governs through silence transforms time itself into a servant, allowing patience to ripen into inevitability. Those who act in haste are consumed by it. Those who wait in silence let the tide carry victory to their shore. The ruler's silence is not a void. It is a presence so complete that it occupies every space where lesser men attempt to intrude. It unsettles those who depend on noise to feel alive, for they mistake speech for existence. Yet, the silent prince needs no confirmation. His quiet becomes the stage upon which others reveal themselves. They speak to fill the air, but in doing so, they unravel their ambitions. In his stillness, the ruler records every word, every hesitation, every false confidence. By saying nothing, he learns everything. By revealing nothing, he holds everything. The wise know that silence is the true currency of power because it cannot be counterfeited. A man may imitate eloquence, but he cannot feign composure. To remain silent under pressure is to declare strength without uttering it. It is to demonstrate dominion over one's nature, and that mastery is the foundation upon which all rule is built. The people follow those who appear unshaken, and silence is the surest mask of calm. The prince must never let the world see his uncertainty. Words betray agitation. Silence masks it beneath the dignity of restraint. It is not enough to possess silence. One must use it as a weapon. The ruler must know when to withhold, when to pause, when to let the tension of unspoken meaning turn into fear. The silence that follows accusation is judgment without verdict. The silence that greets flattery is contempt disguised as wisdom. The silence that endures betrayal is strategy cloaked as indifference. To speak is to release control. To be silent is to hold it. Power lies not in expression, but in reserve, not in the words spoken, but in the one withheld. In the dance of politics, silence is the only step that leaves no trace. Every speech can be quoted, every promise broken, every declaration twisted, but silence remains beyond interpretation. It allows the ruler to occupy every position and none at once, to appear merciful without forgiving, ruthless without confessing. It is the shield of ambiguity, behind which plans may shift and alliances decay unnoticed. The silent prince is not trapped by his own words, for he gives the world nothing to seize. He walks through storms untarnished, because thunder cannot strike what does not rise to meet it. Yet silence is not eternal retreat. There comes a time when silence must break not through impulse, but through precision. When the ruler finally speaks, his words must fall like the blade of judgment, sudden, final, and irrevocable. The long silence before them grants them weight, for what is rare commands attention. Those who have waited in uncertainty receive the word as revelation. The prince must speak only to end, never to explain. Every word that leaves his lips must conclude something, a campaign, a debate, a life. Anything less dilutes authority. In silence, the ruler learns to see beyond appearance, to perceive the invisible cords that bind men to their desires and fears. He watches without participating, and in his detachment, he perceives patterns hidden from the impassioned. His silence becomes the lens through which the chaos of the world is rendered orderly. For to understand human nature, one must first separate from it. The noisy are too entangled in the passions they describe. The silent stand above them, architects of fate rather than victims of it. There is a purity in silence that words can never attain. It belongs to those who have conquered the need for validation, who no longer confuse movement with purpose. The silent ruler governs himself first, and through that mastery, governs others without resistance. For the greatest form of rule is not command, but influence so natural that obedience becomes instinct. This influence grows in silence, unforced, unannounced, absolute. In the end, silence wins, not because it overpowers noise, but because it outlasts it. All noise fades, all declarations decay, all arguments crumble beneath the weight of time, but silence remains constant, unchallenged, enduring. It is the sound of power when all others have exhausted themselves. It is the mark of a ruler who has transcended persuasion, who no longer competes for attention, but shapes destiny through stillness. And when history closes its mouth and the echoes of empires vanish, it is silence that stands unbroken, patient, eternal, victorious. A ruler must understand that silence is not a virtue of gentleness, but a function of power. It is the art of possession without display, the discipline of a mind that no longer seeks permission from the crowd. For power requires distance, and silence is distance made visible. The prince who speaks too freely is already descending from his height. The moment he explains himself, he admits that others have the right to question him. Silence denies that right. It separates command from dialogue, transforming authority into fate. True rule does not reside in the act of speaking, but in the ability to let others speak, for you to let rumor become your herald and fear your interpreter. When the ruler is silent, imagination becomes his messenger. Men fill the void with their own fears, their own hopes, their own projections. They crown him with qualities he never claimed. They attribute to him wisdom, cruelty, mercy, or foresight, all according to what they need to believe. Silence allows the prince to wear every mask without putting on any. It is the throne upon which he sits, unseen yet omnipresent, but silence must be governed with intent. It cannot be mere avoidance or hesitation. A ruler who hides behind quiet because he fears confrontation is already undone. The silence that wins is not born of weakness, but of calculation, the pause of a hunter who measures the distance to his prey. It is an instrument of control, not a refuge from conflict. The prince who holds his tongue must do so with knowledge of its cost and its gain, for silence can both preserve and destroy. If it becomes too prolonged, it hardens into absence. If used without restraint, it turns into mystery. Balance must be struck, for silence is as sharp as any sword and must be wielded with equal precision. In governing men, the silence of the ruler compels observation, but it also compels fear, for the people cannot rest when they do not know what he thinks. Their uncertainty becomes obedience. Their curiosity turns into reverence. A ruler's silence has the power to discipline where punishment cannot. Men fear what they cannot read, and in their fear they behave. Yet the prince must never allow this fear to decay into hatred. Silence must suggest wisdom, not contempt, authority, not neglect. The moment the people believe the prince does not listen, they will stop obeying. Thus, even in silence, he must appear attentive like a god who sees all yet speaks rarely. In war, silence is strategy made visible. A general who reveals his plans through speech invites defeat before the battle begins. The armies that march in noise reveal their weakness. Those that move in silence strike before their name is known. The greatest victory is not one announced by trumpets, but one achieved before the enemy understands it has begun. To rule, therefore, is to wage a continuous, unseen war, a war of patience, of restraint, of waiting for the moment when one word or one gesture will overturn the balance of power. Silence is the weapon that sharpens that moment. Even in peace, silence rules through contrast. When all others rush to speak, to justify, to persuade, the prince who remains composed commands the air itself. His silence makes the noisy appear foolish, the impulsive appear childish. It exposes the rest of the world as disorderly, granting his stillness the appearance of order. In this way, silence is not merely control, it is spectacle. The people crave certainty, and when they see none, they mistake silence for it. Thus, power lies not in the truth, but in the illusion that silence creates, that of a man untouched by confusion, certain of his path, even when the ground trembles beneath him. The ruler who understands this will speak only when speech becomes an act of power. His words must not answer questions, but end them. They must not reveal his mind, but impose it. A single word spoken at the right moment is worth more than 1,000 speeches given in weakness. To govern is to know when sound must yield to stillness, when the pause carries greater command than the proclamation. In the twilight of every empire, when decay has set in and the rulers grow desperate for applause, one will find that noise increases while control diminishes. The council chambers fill with speeches, decrees, and declarations. Yet none of it carries force, for authority has been traded for expression. The wise prince, watching this decline, learns that silence is not only a tool of power, but the sign of its health. Where rulers speak endlessly, order has already begun to rot. Where rulers speak rarely, the foundation still holds. Thus, silence is the last art of the ruler who seeks to endure beyond his time. It is the final discipline after conquest, diplomacy, and fear have all played their part. To rule long is to speak little, to watch much, to act seldom but decisively, for speech dies with the breath that gives it. Silence endures as the echo of dominion. In the theater of statecraft, the noise of the ambitious fades, but the silence of the sovereign fills the ages. The prince who governs himself through silence gains mastery over the world, for he no longer acts as a slave to impulse. The tongue is the first rebellion of the mind. Once loosed, it betrays every intention the ruler meant to conceal. The wise, therefore, begin their governance not over provinces or men, but over the restless empire of their own thoughts. The prince who learns to endure the weight of unspoken truth is the one who cannot be manipulated. His silence becomes a shield against provocation, a fortress against deceit. For what cannot be read cannot be controlled, and what cannot be controlled cannot be destroyed. Silence is not the absence of language, but the transformation of it. It is the highest form of speech, one that speaks through restraint, through gaze, through timing. The ruler who employs silence as language becomes unpredictable, and unpredictability is a force greater than fear. For fear fades with familiarity, but uncertainty endures. Men can learn to live with a tyrant, but they never rest under a silent one. They will watch him, interpret him, second-guess him, and in doing so, they will remain bound to him. Silence enslaves not through command, but through the tension of the unknown. It is through silence that a ruler separates himself from the multitude. The people must believe he belongs to a realm of thought inaccessible to their own. Familiarity breeds contempt, and speech breeds familiarity. Silence maintains elevation. It is the invisible wall that divides the prince from his subjects, turning his presence into something sacred and distant. The people will respect what they cannot touch. The ministers will fear what they cannot predict, and the enemies will hesitate before what they cannot understand. Thus, silence serves as the architecture of majesty, the invisible design that sustains the illusion of divinity in mortal rule. Silence also refines judgment. The ruler who listens long enough will hear the truth, buried beneath flattery and fear. Every courtier carries two voices, one for the prince and one for himself. The first is ornament, the second is intent. Only silence allows the ruler to distinguish between them. By not speaking, he invites revelation. By not reacting, he compels honesty. The weak rush to fill the silence, thinking it emptiness. The strong endure it, knowing it is interrogation. The wise wield it, knowing it is control. To maintain power, a ruler must resist the urge to explain. Explanation is equality disguised as reason. Once you explain yourself, you descend to the level of those who question you. Authority does not argue, it dictates by being. The prince must learn that understanding is not his duty, survival is. Silence is the virtue of survival. It preserves strength when words would deplete it. It conceals wounds when exposure would invite attack. The more you conceal, the more they imagine. And imagination, when directed by silence, becomes the engine of obedience. The highest mastery of silence is when even your stillness moves the world. When men act in anticipation of what you might say, when fear and respect intertwine in the vacuum of your voice, you have reached the summit of influence. This is not the silence of withdrawal, but of command and unspoken presence that governs without gesture. It is the crown that no hand can steal, the fortress no siege can breach. For as long as silence holds its form, power cannot be traced, and what cannot be traced cannot be struck down. Thus, the prince must learn that silence is not an ornament of wisdom, but its very essence. It is the pause before fate, the calm before policy, the shadow that defines light. Those who speak to be heard become servants of opinion. Those who stay silent shape opinion itself. The noise of men passes like wind over the sea, leaving no trace but silence, deep and steady, moves the tide. And when all the tongues of men have spent their fury, the world will turn again toward the one who never needed to speak to be obeyed. For in the end, power does not announce itself. It listens, and silence, patient and unmoved, wins every time. In the end, silence is the purest form of rule, untouched by vanity, uncorrupted by justification. Words decay, reputations fade, but silence endures, perfect in its ambiguity. It is the echo that follows every act of power, the unseen hand that steadies empires and buries kings. The ruler who masters it does not seek to persuade or to please. He seeks only to remain beyond praise, beyond blame, beyond the reach of noise. When the crowd shouts and history argues, his silence becomes the final judgment. It is not forgetfulness that guards his name, but reverence for men will always fear what they could never fully know. So let the ambitious speak and exhaust themselves. Let the righteous protest and be forgotten. The world belongs to those who can wait without explaining, to those whose restraint outlives the chaos of the age. For when all words have turned to dust, when power itself dissolves into memory, one truth remains immutable. Silence was the greater voice. It governed without sound, conquered without motion, and endured without witness. And thus, as it began, so it ends in silence, victorious.